hearing to order. This hearing is called to hear witnesses and testimony from the public with regards to House Bill 2397 to amend certain provisions of the Commonwealth Public Commissions Act of 2006 and for other purposes. This House bill was passed by the House of Representatives on first and final reading by the majority vote of the members present, a quorum being present on their third regular session on March 28, 2024. So before we begin, I'd like to ask Devin to please call the roll, the members.
Senator Selena R.
Present.
Babauta. Senator Francisco Q. Cruz.
Here.
Senator Jude U. Hofschneider.
Negi.
Senator Karina L. Magofi.
Present.
Senator Paul A. Manglonia.
Here.
Senator Donald M. Manglonia.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, all 6 members are present.
Okay, with the necessary quorum, we will proceed with our hearing this morning. For the benefit of the general public, this committee meeting by public hearing by PUTC is being conducted to address and deliberate on House Bill 2397. The Commonwealth Legislature established the Public Utility Commissions, PUC, in 2006 as a regulatory agency in accordance with Article 3, Section 15 of the Commonwealth Constitution. The PUC is an independent agency within the executive branch of the CNMI government and not a part of any principal department. As the House's Standing Committee Report number 2373 stated, as an independent agency which oversees and regulates the tremendously important public utilities of the CNMI, the PUC must have independent control of its finances, expedited procurement of its needs, unencumbered hiring of its employees to successfully operate in a timely and efficient manner, and added compensation to cover the extra demands of the commissioners, or subject to annually reporting to the governor's office, the legislature, and the office of the public auditor, the commission's due diligence in its overall positions. The amendments under House Bill 2397 will change the manner of PUC's funding its administration, the processes of its procurement needs, the hiring of its staff and employees, and an adjustment to the compensation of the commissioners to guarantee proper payment of their extra candidates to accept all the responsibilities of PUC's many challenges to protect and preserve the fair and reasonable cost of the CNMI public utilities. So, okay. So I will be going back so that we can adopt our agenda, but just to finally say that in today's hearing, we appreciate any and all comments on the intent and purposes of House Bill 2397 as we deliberate on this measure. So before proceeding, any motion on the adoption of our agenda this morning?
Second.
Okay. So it's been seconded. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Agenda so adopted. At this point, I would like to ask any member of the public, before we recognize our witnesses, if they wish to make any presentation. It's open to the public. I recognize Congressman, Chairman of PUTC in the House, Vince O'Don. Please come forward.
Good morning, Chairman Senator Paul and distinguished members of the Senate PUTC Committee. No, I just wanted to be here to reiterate the importance of the PUC Commission and why no that I introduced such bill. I believe that the job of the PUC commissioners is to do to regulate and oversight the CUC corporation, and if they do not have the financial stability and backing, it would hinder their ability to hire, their private counsel or their expert, economists, or, anybody that they need. It would hinder their operation and the job scope that they have. And with that being said, it's going to be it makes it difficult for CUC as well to operate in a manner that is beneficial to the whole community of the CNMI. And the just the job scope of a commissioner itself is daunting. It is practically a full-time job. If you look at the duties and responsibilities that they have, that's why I also included a better compensation package for them, because it's only fair. Having to do an economic analysis or overseeing CUC's policies, rules, and regulations, and any complaints, if they do not have the employees that they need and do not get compensated, with the time that is required for them to do their job, it makes it hard for them to execute, which in turn affects everybody in the CNMI. Not just Saipan, but Rhoda, Tinia, and everybody. So it's very imperative that they become financially independent. And the money that they get are from regulated entities, and from that alleviates us from having to fund them. Right now, even though the commissioners are there, they have no employees whatsoever, so they're stuck. They can't move, they can't do anything because they don't have the resources. And with the Department of Finances controlling all of that, it's going to be hard for them to execute a contract with an independent auditor or an independent economist, or rate study to help out with CUC. So I believe that with the commissioners, being an independent, agency, together with handling their own finances, they could move faster than the central government allows them to. So I'm here to support this bill, because I believe that it'll help out the CUC and everybody else in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
This is Chairman. Any other member from the public? If none, moving along on our um, list of witnesses here, can we recognize the chairman, James Sarek?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Please excuse my casual attire. I wasn't expecting to testify this morning, and I apologize, but I'm glad I came up here. I thought it was an oversight hearing on CUC, so I apologize for my blue jeans and casual attire to all of the senators. Thank you for allowing me to comment on this bill. Just a little bit of background. With the last commission, before they lost their quorum, they acted pretty much independently. They had their own separate bank account in First Hawaiian Bank, which allowed them to make payments for expenses that they incurred, including payments for hearing officers, payments for their attorney who was on as not a third-party contractor, but an actual employee of the commission and so forth. When we got our quorum, I had a discussion with Secretary of Finance and indicated that we would like to continue that process. And based on the current law, which provides that any funding that we get through our assessment has to come into a revolving fund. It's in the name of the commission, but it's still held within the CNMI government, within the Secretary of Finance, that she would not agree to allowing us having an independent bank account so we could handle our own expenses and write our own checks. So what has happened, just as an example, is we had in November, submitted a request to Secretary of Finance just for small amounts, which paid for publication fees for 4 meetings and paid for the stipends of the commissioners for 4 meetings, 3 of which were only $30 each. The other one was $60 each. I still haven't got that payment today because we have to go through several steps within the government. And I was down in finance today. They've been very accommodating, so I'm not complaining about that at all. I'm just complaining about the process itself. So I was at finance again today. It looks like we're finally going to get payment, but again, there was a request that just to get the stipends, for example, each of our commissioners have to submit a form and to get a vendor number, which is unusual. So we're moving through this process, but the real intent of this House bill, after discussions, is to really make us more independent, be able to have our own revolving fund, which we could put into a bank account and have access to that bank account. We would still have accountability both to the legislature and to the public auditor's office on a yearly basis. We would provide reports. This bill allows the public auditor to do audits on us so that there is an accountability of that. That is the main purpose of having this bill, to make it clear that we are an independent entity, that we're not part of we're not an administrative department within the executive branch. There was some feeling within the Attorney General's office that we are part of the CNMI, and if we are to, for example, go into court, we have to bring whatever we want to do within a court proceeding in the name of the CNMI and not in the name of the commission. Even though if you read our statute clearly, down at the bottom for appeals and things like that, it's clear that we have the right to request relief from the court. But we don't feel that we want to keep bumping heads with the Attorney General's office, especially when it's the Attorney General's office that is representing CUC, for example. So we would like to make sure that we have our own independent counsel as well. But we also want to make sure that we're able to do what we need to do, including having powers of enforcement and powers to penalize for entities, regulated entities that are not complying, and be able to have some support by being able to go to court if we need to in our own name and litigate these issues in our own name and not have the Attorney General's office represent us in court in the name of the CNMI. The other thing is that the prior commission actually promulgated rules and regulations, which are allowed by our enabling statute. But those rules and regulations were turned back by the Attorney General's office because they felt that the commission wasn't independent enough at that time, that they still had to go through different procurement procedures, for example, through the CNMI government's procurement process. So we wanted to make sure with these amendments that we were able to promulgate our own rules and regulations and have our own procurement process without having to, again, get the agreement of the CNMI government or the Attorney General's office. Again, especially when the Attorney General's office is representing CUC and the Commonwealth and other entities that that we may come in conflict with at some point in time. And I'm not talking about, really fighting, odds and ends. We don't ever want to do that, but we want to make sure that we can operate outside the political arena, I guess you can say, and deal with issues that we're supposed to be dealing with. That's all I have to say right now, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you're going to be hanging around a little bit,
Yes.
Chairman. So if
Yes.
the members have questions, we appreciate your responses.
Yes.
So this point, we'll move on. And I guess there's no other member here from PUC with you, right? So we'll go on to Chairwoman Janice Tenora, CUC.
Good morning. Good morning,
Morning,
Chair
Chairwoman.
and honorable members. Thank you for today's hearing. Unfortunately, we received the notice last week um, was it Friday? And we did not have time to meet with the board. We had a board meeting on Thursday, but we received the notice on Friday. So we did not have the board, I and the board of CUC did not have ample time to review the bill. However, though, um, as I'm present here today, I would like to make a comment, a brief statement in regards to the House bill, and then I'll bring it back to the board and probably make a full comments in regards to as a whole board. Okay, and by the way, because I know I'm probably wearing you looking at me and I'm wearing two hats. So I'm Janice Tenorio. My full-time job is actually over at ITNE, and my appointed position is the CUC board. I'm the chairperson for CUC. However, though, I'm here on behalf of myself representing the CUC with the ITNE representative. I believe that our general manager will be submitting and our legal counsel will be submitting a statement in regards to their comments on the bill in regards to ITNE. So let me switch my hat back to
Thank you for the clarification.
yes. Hmm. So let me switch back to the CUC. Okay, board of directors didn't have ample time to review the for official comment. However, I've read the bill and I cannot claim to respond as a whole board, but I can also just make a comment on myself. Okay. While the intention behind the bill is undoubtedly well meaning, and I believe it is imperative to carefully consider the implication of such amendments of the integrity and effectiveness of CPUC. The proposal compensation commissioners at a monthly rate, along with the creation of the position of such an executive director, additional staff, raise a significant question about the fundamental principles underlying the purpose of public service and the efficiency of regulatory bodies. First, the traditional of having an uncompensated compensated commissioners is rooted in the concept of public service. Commissioners, by virtue of their roles, are entrusted with the responsibility of safeguarding the interests of the community without the expectation of financial gain. Introducing monetary compensation may inadvertently compromise the impartiality and dedication of public service that are essential qualities to the effective commissioners. Moreover, the suggestion to expand the CPUC's bureaucracy with the appointment of an executive director and the staff members runs counter to nation of streamlined and efficient governance. The CPUC, like many regulatory bodies, should prioritize lean operation, direct engagement, and issue at hand. Delegating essential duties is to bloated bureaucracy and not only diminish the accountability of commissioners, but also introduce unnecessary bureaucracy hurdles that would impede in timely decision making process. Additionally, the argument of an extensive staff executive director overlooks the potential of oversourcing tasks such as rate studies to expert consultants. By leveraging external expertise on an as needed basis, the CPUC can ensure rigorous and objective analysis while maintaining its focus on the strategic oversight and policy formulation. In conclusion, I urge that this humble body to carefully consider this provision of HB 2397 in light of these concerns. The traditional of public service and promoting a lean, effective governance structures within CPUC are essential to upholding the integrity and the effectiveness of regulatory oversight over the CNMI public utilities. To add, if this body or the CPUC would like to have its own budget and entity and process, um, I believe that it should maybe be an elected officials or elected commissioners rather than appointed. Appointed by the governor, that I believe that they should follow the CNMI procurement process as well as being budgeted through the CNMI finance office. Um, that's all I have, Chair. Thank you so
Mrs.
much
Mossy,
for giving me this
Madam Chairwoman.
opportunity, and CUC for giving this opportunity. And by the way, both ITNE and CUC have paid their assessment to the chair. Just to clarify that. The Go ahead. Yes, correct. We didn't pay the full, but just portion. But at least we paid. You didn't have. You had none before, right? Go ahead, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Chairwoman. We listed down also the acting executive director. Would you want to comment, Director?
Good morning,
Thank you.
Chairman Glonia and the honorable Senate members of this committee. Um, Similar to our chairwoman's testimony, I had only seen the bill yesterday, so I have not had the time to put my comments together on this matter. However, hearing the concerns from CPUC CPUC chairman and also our director, um, at the end of the day, uh, there are already laws in place that I guess address certain things like compensation and other protocols. But I would like to defer my comments until we've had a chance to understand, why CPUC wants to divert from the the process that's already set in place for them. When it comes to compensation, I'm only concerned about setting precedents. There are other regulatory bodies from many other agencies. CUC has a board itself, and I believe that there are rules that dictate compensation. I, for one, see the hard work that our board members put in, having to review lots of documents so that when we have our meetings and conversations, we're talking on the same page and with a lot of knowledge to make sound decisions. So I understand the tremendous amount of work that has to go into these commissioners and board members' time and efforts to be able to make the right decisions for the community. So when we talk about compensation, we should look at all the commissioners and board members across the board and not just one particular body. Otherwise, this will set precedents and everybody will start coming forward to address their own bodies, what they feel is justified for their work. So, um, but no set position at this time. Thank you for the opportunity to
Okay.
share.
Mrs. Mossy, Director. Um, I guess we don't have anyone from Docomo, and ITN is supposed to be coming later with their comments. So I'm going. You want to comment for the second time, Chairman?
Just briefly, if I may.
Please do so.
I appreciate the comments made by the chairman for CUC, chairwoman, I apologize. And as far as executive director and staff, that provision was already in the enabling statute. So this House bill is not adding anything new. And obviously, I think we can all recognize, hopefully, that staff is needed to make copies of things, organize things, just handle office affairs. But on the compensation thing, I understand that. I just this month, and we haven't even had a board meeting, I've logged in almost 25 hours. With this, it'll be more than that. So we do put in a substantial amount of time. Likewise, CUC's board of directors, I have personal knowledge of this because I was with CUC for 6 years, and they do a tremendous amount of work. And so there are certainly other corporations, other public entities that would deserve to have their board members or commissioners or whatever position, that appointed position, paid other than sitting in a voluntary status. And CUC is certainly one of those. They put in a lot of work with a lot of long board meetings. So, that's up to them and that corporation, that entity, to ask for amendments for that. But for us, as was indicated, we do a lot of work necessary. And I think for us to be able to do that work, it would be fair to compensate us for all of the time that we put in. And we're not asking for a lot compared to other boards like the Casino Gambling Commission and so forth. So that's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Can I ask, before I recognize the members for questions, can I just ask, why is it, having sat there now as member of PUC for, several months, can I ask you, why is it that over the years we have had long periods where there's no quorum at PUC? What's the reason there's no members, that are not enough qualified appointees, or there's no desire for members of the public to serve here? Why is it that we have those long periods that at one point we even had to amend the law to say even one member could consist of the quorum? We're trying to figure that out. Do you have any comment or any of the witnesses on that regard?
Yeah, Chairman, I don't have any personal knowledge. I know, the governor appoints the commissioners, and I haven't had a discussion with the prior governor as to why he didn't appoint commissioners at that time. So I just can't give you an answer, but I know that it was, as you have indicated, a long, long period of time, way too long. And I believe that, quite frankly, I think there's a fiduciary responsibility on the part of the executive branch and the governor to appoint commissioners or directors and individuals within a reasonable period of time when their seat becomes vacant. And that's my personal view. I don't think it's a sort of an obnoxious point of view. I think that the public deserves that, and unfortunately, we didn't get that with respect to the Public Utilities Commission and the prior conduct of Governor Torres. Thank you.
But as an attorney, can I ask you to assist the committee with a language that will prevent that from happening in the future? So if we ever tackle this legislation, is something that we can consider a language to require that appointments be made. I know we don't have a concern with this governor because he's eager to appoint the members, but we don't want any future governor to be able to just, by not appointing, kind of derail the main function of PUC to oversee our utilities. So appreciate some kind of language on that. So now at this point, I'd like to recognize members who have any question. Any member? Senator Bavalta?
Thank you, Chairman Mangonia. My first question is for the chairman of CPUC. How much do you anticipate in annual assessment fees?
The annual assessment fees are based on first finding out what the revenue of our regulated entities was. We take that revenue and we put that next to what our budget is, and we get a percentage. In other words, we divide that revenue into our budget. That gives a percentage per regulated entity. and then we take that percentage against our budget. So it's based on the formula that's in this statute. But the first step that we do is we ask the entities to provide us with what their revenue was, so we can come up with that overall number.
And what is the budget by statute?
Our budget right now is 200, and actually I don't have that with me. I have it out in the car, but it's 216,000 or 216, 220,000, somewhere around there. And I should indicate, Senator, that that budget was determined in our meeting in November. And at that time, representatives from IT&E and CUC were there. We allowed them to participate in making that budget, which they did. And so we had a full discussion, and everyone agreed that our budget was very reasonable. And in fact, I think IT&E and CUC indicated that they felt that it was actually pretty low compared to what they felt it could have been. So we feel our budget is very reasonable. And I will be
At
submitting.
200 some thousand.
Yes, yes. And I'll tell you why. We had to buy in our budget, we had to buy furniture, everything. We had to start from scratch because there's no furniture, there's no equipment, there's nothing that was left over from the past commission. So our budget includes money to purchase furniture and equipment.
Okay. And what would you use your budget for aside from furniture and the
Our
like?
budget pays for, would end up paying for, we have an administrative hearing officer, which would deal with things other than actual hearings. We would have an attorney. We would
An
have at least
administrative
one
hearing
staff.
officer that does not only hear administrative matters? Is that what you're saying? What other assignments would you provide?
They would hear administrative matters, but they would deal with them, but they wouldn't get compensated from the regulated entities for those services. So we provide, like the last commission actually had a hearing officer that they paid a salary to, which was about $60,000 a year, on top of getting paid for that hearing officer's conduct and actions in a regulatory hearing. Some issues, for example, would be under our enabling statute, we would hear complaints, customer complaints, and that hearing officer would deal with those customer complaints. That's not something that we would charge against a particular entity under our enabling statute right now.
In what situation would a customer?
They,
that's
under the enabling statute, they can complain about anything. They can come in and say, wait a minute, we feel that this particular rate is not right, or CUC is not,
Oh, I see. Because you're
is-
regulating these.
right, is
telecommunications
not fair. They're charging us for water usage when, they should not charge us, different things. Same way with IT&E customers or Docomo customers, telephone service. I know that Mr. Angelo, when he testified in his hearing last week, indicated that there were complaints that he had to Docomo and so forth about some charges and things. So those kinds of things can actually come to the commission for hearing if they want to file a complaint.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, can the gentleman in the third seat introduce themselves? In himself?
How do you do, honorable members? My name is Hunter Hunt, Assistant Attorney General from the Attorney General's Office. I advise CUC. My apologies. I was not meaning to make any testimony this morning. I don't have license to represent the Attorney General in this capacity, but I'm here to support my clients, the CUC.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just so we know what your role is.
Of course.
Thank you.
If I may, just one more addition to your question, I apologize. For example, some of the money would be paid for consultants, but those consultants would be dealing with issues that perhaps were not hearing related. For example, there was a question brought to the commission as to when are we going to do a rate study technically, that rate study is done by, for example, CUC before they prepare a rate petition for us to act on. But we do have the independent authority to do a rate study on our own, to modify rates on our own. So if we did that rate study, we would need consultants to do that. So we have to have money to pay consultants to those fees as well.
I have a question, Mr. Sarah. Why would you need an independent attorney general? I mean, attorney.
To advise us on different things as well as look at the contracts. We feel that, for example, right now we have the Attorney General's office sitting on CUC side, and
Sure.
we would have conflicts back and forth. We don't want to
Sure.
have that, especially during a petition, a rate petition. That rate petition, CUC would be represented by an attorney. We don't want to have the same attorney from the same office representing the commission in that situation as well.
If you were granted your request in the budget proposal of 200,000 for CPUC's budget, would that mean you would hire an attorney full-time?
We're not looking at full-time now. We're looking at like a third-party contract where we would hire them only for work performed on an hourly basis.
Okay.
And that's why under our budget, I think our attorney budget, I wish I have it is out in the car. I didn't expect to bring it in today,
Sure.
but I think it was only for like 50 or 60,000, something like that. It's not a lot of money. So we didn't expect to have a full-time attorney on staff.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Senator Selena. Senator Karina, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome again, CUC and Mr. Syrock. Just some follow-up questions. So the administrative hearing officer, you said that you need that in case there's some complaints that are brought forth to the commission. How is that different from what CUC already has? So typically when a customer has a complaint about their bills or whatever, right, they would go to CUC, fill out the dispute form, and then go through a process. And if management is unable to resolve the issue, then it would go to the board for a hearing. How is that different from a hearing from the commission side?
Well, if it goes to the board, CUC board for hearing, and they're not happy with that decision, I think they can go, I believe they can go under the Administrative Procedure Act, probably to the court, but they can also have a process through us as well. It's in our enabling statute. I know that when I was with CUC for 6 years, I wasn't aware of any complaint that actually went to the commission complaining about CUC matters. I'm not sure about IT&E or DOCOMO matters, but as far as CUC, but it's available. And so as a contingency, we want to make sure we have some ability to do that. But a hearing officer is definitely needed for rate petitions, rate cases, and even for action that we may take on our own initiative to deal with reviewing of rates and actions of entities that we regulate.
Okay. Okay, and what was the budget again that you submitted, the proposed budget that you submitted?
I don't have the exact number. I think it's around 200 and maybe somewhere between 220 and 250,000, something like that.
Okay. And the administrating hearing officer would be salaried or
That would be what we propose to do is do, we call a task order contract. In other words,
So
we get
similar to
we get
the-
an RFP, we get he tells us what his hourly rate would be. So we have him under a contract for a year or 2 years,
so
and then we
it'll be
give him
similar
task
to
orders.
the attorney that you had explained
Right.
earlier. So
And
it'll be per work performed.
Right, he would get task orders. I think our budget for a hearing officer was only around 40,000 in our budget,
Okay. 45.
because whatever, as I indicated before, if he provides services for a formal hearing, a rate hearing, that would be paid for by the entity requesting the rate adjustment.
Sure. And okay, so the 40K was based on what basis? Like, how did you come up with 40,000?
His salary was 60,000 in the past, and he was drawing that salary, and some of that salary was even given to him when the commission didn't even have a quorum. So he was paid a salary actually all the way through March of 2017.
Okay.
The commission lost its quorum in 2016. But we thought that that was a fair amount. We don't know. We're sort of acting in the blind right
Right.
now. And certainly when we do a budget for fiscal year 25, we'll be able to adjust that as well. But it's there in the budget as a contingency, and we're not sure, but we thought that would be a fair number.
So the 220 to 250 is a proposed budget for 2025, correct?
That's a budget that we adopted for fiscal year 24. We haven't acted for fiscal year 25 yet, which will begin. I think that fiscal year 25 begins October 1, right?
Right.
Right.
So so that budget that you adopted was based on the assessment fees that you have collected?
That
not-
budget was adopted before we assessed the fees that we collect now, except for CUC. I mean, we did the analysis for CUC, but because it gets us such a large amount of revenue, I think it's public knowledge. It's over 11 million, I believe, in revenue annually.
Okay.
So they're always going to pay the minimum amount, which is set by law, which is 137,000. So, and their percentage when I did the calculations was well over 100 and, excuse me, I said 137, 130,000.
Okay.
Well over 130,000, but we know they're always going to get that. So, but the other entities, the assessment that we gave them were based on our fiscal 24 budget.
Got it. So I guess CPUC has two budgets that they're working with. One is the budget that the commission has adopted, which was the 200 something
Right.
thousand, plus the 66,000 that was appropriated through the legislature.
We didn't get any appropriation from the legislature. It's not in
For
there. My discussion with finance was the only money that was in there was $10,000, which was money that was to be paid for staff. And I had to ask for, this is one of the hoops that I jumped through to be able to get some payments. I had to ask for them to reprogram a portion of that, which could only be 10% or so of that.
Mhm.
So I could pay for publication cost and stipends. So, but we have no budget, and under the law, we don't get appropriations from the legislature. So I'm sorry if that information
Okay,
is out
so
there.
I mean, the information that I have shows that the legislature appropriated $66,000 for CPUC for fiscal year 2024.
I think what happened when we initially were organized, which was right before the deadline for submitting a budget to the legislature, Mr. Angelo, as our Secretary Treasurer, submitted a number of 66,000, which was a budget from the past commission way back, not in 2016, but a number we came from records that we got from way back when they initially started. And I think he submitted that to the legislature, and I know it went into the budget format, but it wasn't actually appropriated. I think you carry that number over somehow, some way. I don't know the workings, but we didn't actually get an appropriation for that, according to the Secretary of Finance.
Okay. I'm just sharing the information that I have that is an approved budget for
Yeah.
fiscal year 2024. So maybe that's something that you need to have a conversation with the Secretary of
Okay.
Finance.
The other thing too, we will be submitting an FY25 budget in time this year.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
so it'll be in, but again,
Actually-
it's based on our requirement under the law to provide that for informational purposes only. That's how we've read it. And we clarified that in this amendment
So
as
actually, the
well.
budget for 2025 was due earlier this year, I think February. The governor has already submitted his proposed budget in April. So
Right.
if you haven't submitted the 2025 budget, I think you should
But
probably.
we're going to be doing that.
Okay.
Again, our understanding, and I apologize, we need to look into, our understanding is when we submit that budget, it's not for appropriation purposes, but for information purposes, based on the language in our enabling statute. So,
Okay. And then, so going back to the adopted budget, so you have a consultant here to do some consulting work, obviously. What was the budget for that?
consulting, I think, I can't remember what that number was. You know, I have it out in my car. I think I do. Because I was with finance, and I don't remember if I put a copy of that in the file that I went to finance or not. I don't remember
Okay.
that number
I-
right
I
now,
guess
but I
I'm
can
just
certainly
trying-
email it to you. I can email the whole budget to
Okay,
you.
thank you. I guess I'm just trying to understand, what would the 200 plus K budget would cover? And obviously you need some administrative personnel to assist with all the daily, whatever administrative stuff. So I was just trying to understand the composition of your budget.
Right.
And aside from that, that's all I have, Chair.
If I may, one last comment, Senator McGoffin. Our budget, also the enabling statute allows us to have a reserve in our budget. So we did have a reserve as well. So, but most of it's for furniture and equipment and things that we need to get to start up with.
Sorry, one more. May I ask what that reserve? What's
It was
the number?
$5,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mostly, Senator Corina, recognize Senator Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go off of Senator Magofnia's line of questions, I think, can you share your communication with the Department of Finance? Because 66,000 is an approved amount that you should be getting. And it looks like it was only, and I think the justification for that was to allow the commission to have a full-time staff in order to get the commission up and running. And so if you're still having issues in regards to trying to get somebody on board, I would ask that you provide copies of your correspondence with Department of Finance so we can address that issue. What are your challenges, if any, have you had in trying to get the commissioners from Rhoda and Tinian to join you in your meetings?
We have no commissioner from Tinian. Our Rhoda has always been at all of our meetings through either mostly telephone. So we have telephone open during the meeting.
When you say no commissioners, you mean
We do not have a commissioner appointed from Tinian. We have no Tinian representative, only Rhoda.
And what is your challenge with getting him to?
We haven't had any challenges. He's been available by telephone, so that he's always there during the meeting by an open telephone. We tried Zoom, and we've actually had people from the legislature as well as other members watch us and actually participate in our meetings through Zoom. So we do have Zoom capabilities during our meetings, but our Rhoda commissioner isn't up on technology, so he's having a hard time dealing with the Zoom process. So we just use an open telephone line for him. And I don't have, going to your last question, I have communication with finance with respect to the request for payments, but I don't have communication with respect to the amount because that was done in person by an in-person conversation when we had a meeting with her and the governor together. So there's no actual communication on that.
Okay.
But I do have something from finance that indicates this is the budget amount is $10,000 some dollars. That's the only thing I have.
Okay. And this 200 some thousand that was agreed upon, is that inclusive of Docomo? And
Yes, that's inclusive of everybody. And I said 10, I should say 13. Now I'm thinking about it, it's 13 that's in the current budget for us, for staff.
what do you mean 13? 13?
13,300 something, I
That's
think.
in the current.
That's in the
budget.
current budget. I had to reprogram, so they reprogrammed 13,300 some in the budget. I reprogrammed 1,338 to be able to use to cover for publication cost and other expenses.
Sorry, Chair Tenora, you had something?
Thank you. May we clarify further in regards to the assessment and studies? And I will yield to the Executive Director, Ms. Betty Terlai.
The assessment fees is part of their revenue stream. So in addition to that, whatever appropriations are on top of that. So when CPUC submits a budget, shouldn't they include all of this for that year's budget because that's their year's revenues? And if they are allowed to put a reserve, then they should indicate in the budget that there's a portion assigned to their reserves so that all the assessments are accounted for and on record in through their budget. Otherwise, we'd be making the payments, but it's not reflective on their revenues. So, for example, if 2024 they got 66,000, and then we paid the partial for 2024, and ITN and Docomo, I would think that all of that should be included in the 2024's budget. And then just to clarify, another item was to clarify that Chair Cyrock did say that this is covering what goes to CPUC, but when there's a rate case or any other review that's done between the utility and CPUC, we fort that bill. We get the bills directly from their consultants and the hearing officer, which is separate from what Mr. Cyrock was explaining, that it's for the matters that go directly to CPUC.
Okay. Well, it's going to be a revolving fund anyway, and so I guess projected revenue is something that they can report, but it won't be accurate in the sense that it will be a non-lapsing account, and it's a revolving fund that essentially will be reserved for future uses. And that's why we get reports on balances of revolving fund accounts to make that determination. Do you think CUC or ITNE would anticipate additional or any increases to fees because of fees that would be needed to pay for CPUC and assessment in those fees, and that by essentially with this proposal to start paying commissioners, I guess there's some concerns that people could perceive it as something that now these entities will have to be paying into CPUC, which may in the end result in an increase in fees to the customers. Do you anticipate that happening for anyone?
The fees, the consultant fees are in the rates. And so in the process of the rate study, we also project what the consultant fees would be. And at this point, it would be based on history since we haven't submitted one since 2012-14, two different rate studies. But the 137 is that we have to transmit to CPUC as the assessment. That would be also part of the expenditures that go into the rates. So on an annual basis, it's about 137, and then the consultant fees are usually factored in. Sometimes the consultants would be the one to propose what the rate should be that goes into the rates for that portion for the consultants' expenditures.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. That's all I have for now, Chair.
Any other member? If not, let me just carry forward the discussion on the assessment fee. So after 2012 and 2014, I guess the rates were much lower for services provided by the regulated agency because there was no. I mean, I guess what happened? Did the regulated agency stop paying their dues when we did not have the quorum? Is that what happened?
Yes, the CUC paid its regulatory fee for fiscal year 2016, as did ITNE.
Prior to that, they weren't paying?
They were paying. After 2016, we had no quorum. Fiscal year 2016, actually, we lost our quorum in, I think, August of 2016. But there were still expenses because the commission had two commissioners and then it went down to one commissioner. They were still paying for rent. They were paying for staff at that time. They were paying for various services. So they had expenses that went all the way into fiscal year 2017, all the way through April of 2017. So for that first part of 2017, there were actual commission expenses.
So I guess my question is, so
But
were they
but there were no
paying?
payments.
There were
No
no payments.
payments, even though a commission still existed. There were no payments, and there was nobody really at the commission. At the very ending days, the last 3-4 months, they were using Mark Hansen's office as its office to do administrative work and things like that, keep bank records and so forth.
So is there a requirement though every year that PUC meets with the regulated agencies representatives and talk about their budget for the fiscal year? Is there any requirement for you to do that?
The requirement is an annual assessment, and the annual assessment is based on a budget as well as the revenue. But no one made assessments. When we reconvened with a quorum last year, we felt that it wasn't appropriate to assess money. We, as a commission, which was a hotly debated topic actually, which included Congressman Aldan as the chairman of the House Public Utility Commission. But we finally decided that we should not assess for all of those years, that there was no actual business performed by the commission. But we did assess what we called a half a year. We assessed for 3 months of fiscal year
Well,
2017.
I'm just asking, I want
Yeah.
to know what is in your regulation or in the books, in the laws that require you to meet with the regulated agencies and discuss your annual budget. And I'm especially more concerned because the bill here before us will remove the word approval to just for information. So if that were the case, then I think we need to look at the requirement for a discussion with the regulated agencies before you submit that budget to the legislature for information. So I guess the question is that in your in your regulation?
If I may, Chairman, our House bill doesn't remove any approval. There's nothing in there that requires approval.
Well,
on-
presently on page 4, that's the requirement under subsection K, that you just prepare and submit a budget to the legislature for its information.
Right, that was an added provision, but there wasn't anything in the original enactment that required approval. The only language that we is in on another line where it says that the amount that we ask for assessment shouldn't exceed our budget, and it says as appropriated by the legislature, but we don't get an appropriation from the legislature, so we took that
So
out.
this is passed by the House that we remove approval and put information. That's per the bill before us now.
On page 4. I apologize.
Yes.
Oh, okay. The budget is approved, right, but it doesn't mean that there's an appropriation. I don't know. I apologize. I
Okay,
don't know this,
so-
so I'm probably messing
Okay,
up.
so I
everything.
guess I take it from you that it doesn't matter if we keep the approval, because I think this is concerning that
Okay.
you're going to make a budget and then the legislature doesn't have a say, and that's why I'm asking. Is there anything in? I think there should be some language in your regulation to require you to meet with the regulated agencies. And I like what I heard earlier, that you met with them and they said, hey, this is a very low budget. They know that they appreciate your concern on hiring other staff, right? So I guess that's a key component of your agency, that you discuss it with the regulated agencies. But moving forward, I just want to ask also, the only language that we're seeing here is to add the words legal counsel to subsection 8406. Would that give you the request that you're asking, that you have your own attorneys other than that provided by the Attorney General?
Well, I
Just-
think what the commission relied on in the past was to employ uh, uh, services for specialists, experts, and so forth. So they hired a legal counsel. So we just made that clear that we could hire our own legal
So
counsel.
you just wanted that clear, and that
Right.
should. But right now you don't have an issue, right? I mean, with the AG, as far as like when you need to hire an independent counsel, you don't have an issue today.
We haven't asked the AG for an independent counsel contract to date because we have no money right now to submit to.
Also,
to
you're
go
just
on and do an
anticipating
RFP.
that there might be a concern in the future.
Exactly.
But there's nothing in the laws that prevent you, right?
Well, there is a conflict, and it probably deals with the constitutional provision, because I think the Attorney General's office has taken the position that it's supposed to represent all corporations, government corporations, and commissions, and so forth. So, of course, CUC can hire its own legal counsel. It has that in its enabling statute. Is chosen to use the services of the Attorney General's office. We would prefer not to have to do that based on what we feel would be a conflict, obviously. As you can see right now, especially if we're doing rate situations, or if we're doing any kind of penalties or assessments or something like that. We don't want to have an attorney from the Attorney General's office where they're working in the same office dealing with that kind of a conflict.
The members of the commission, they have to be approved by both the House and the Senate, right? This is the only commission that requires both houses to confirm.
That is correct.
Okay. And so right now you have only two members on board?
Right now, it's only myself and Commissioner Kittigwa from Rhoda, because Mr. Angelo's term has expired and Mr. Basa's term has expired.
Okay, I see Chairwoman raising her hand. Chairwoman?
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the legal counsel, so I believe that the AG's office is just the perception probably seems that it's conflict because the AG is representing one corporation to the other. But for example, we have dealt with CHCC, who has an AG legal counsel that sits in their body, as well as we have our AG that sits in our board that communicates in regards to whatever decision making or legal ramification that CSS.
Sorry, the AG's rule is dictated by the Constitution.
Yeah, the AG's rule is dictates by the Constitution. So I believe there's no.
Okay, and the chairman is kind of saying the same thing also. He just
Well-
wants to put it in the words legal counsel
our-
to make it further clear. I
Our
understand.
situation is not like that because CHC doesn't regulate CUC. We regulate CUC, which means we can penalize them. We can call them in for oversight hearings. We can investigate them. We don't want to have attorneys from the same office in that kind of a conflicting situation. That's not what you have with CHC and CUC, for example, now.
But we still have to deal with the Constitution, right? And so I guess you're saying that putting in legal counsel there should further clarify your need to hire an independent attorney. What does this bill do with the accounting side? Just the change there to allow you to promulgate procurement rules and regulations? Is that
Yes,
sufficient enough to
yes,
to grant you the
yes,
okay?
as well as our own accounting. I think we just clarified that we were allowed to do our own accounting system, but we wanted to make sure that it was, a system that is our, I mean, it would be a standardized accounting system that would be, my understanding, approved by the public auditor's office, for example.
Okay. And I know that there were discussions earlier about The compensation, I think the committee would have to meet and discuss that. We heard comments from CUC, and I guess the committee would have to discuss that unless some of the members want to bring that up, but we can discuss that in the committee meetings. Any other member then? Senator Ju?
Thank you, Chairman and members, and good morning. I was just listening to the line of questioning. Very important that we kind of fresh our memory with this important body. As Chairman Manglona mentioned earlier, I think this is one of there's actually a reason why both houses are required to entertain confirmation with usually that's the responsibility of the Senate. But with PUTC, there's only one other appointee that is being confirmed by both houses, and that is the OPA. So, and I can just recollecting my memory that it's very complicated. It's difficult to find willing members to serve in this committee, as what you indicated also earlier. You're trying to redefine your existence with what I'm just reading on this 2397. But I do want to ask this question for anyone. Are we familiar with any other jurisdiction, island jurisdiction preferred, that is effectively have a functioning commission and it's meeting its objective of its existence? Any, like in Guam or Hawaii or any other? It's an open question to anybody.
If I may, my understanding is both Guam and Hawaii, their commissions are completely independent, and I think that almost all entities, including the United States, their commissioners are paid, except for there's one island entity that I've been told that they're not. But in most instances, a standard procedure that the commissioners receive some payment.
Okay, so I also acknowledge that you're going to be self-funded based on the discussions the last few minutes. This is not atypical of any other similar agencies or body.
My understanding is that all regulatory agencies that I'm familiar, utility regulatory agencies, are self-funded. I don't really know, for example, some of the commissions in some of the states, but I've been told that that is standard practice, that they're self-funded through assessments against the entities that they regulate.
Okay, so
excuse me for a minute. I should indicate that assessment is for funding of administrative cost. Yeah, for example, rent for offices, staff, things like that, furniture, equipment, subscriptions, and things.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that the budget from assessment fee ceased to exist sometime in 2017. Is that what you said earlier?
I don't have a budget for the assessments continued up through fiscal year 2016. They stopped.
But you can't approve them or take act on it because there's no quorum. Or
there was no assessments that sent out since then. As far as the budget, the only budget information we had, as I indicated, was this budget for 66,000 from way back. It wasn't a 2016 budget. A lot of the records, I should indicate this, we have very minimal records from the past commission as well. A lot of the records, for some reason, are lost. No one knows where they are. So I'm collating records from files that I received from the past chairman, Mr. Joe Guerrero, as well as just a few of the records that I got from Mark Hansen's office.
So, Mr. Sarek, or maybe it's open question by the community. There are some concerns of potentially driving the rates up of some of these entities that you regulate. Should we consider changing some of the provisions of the statute as it is right now? Is that something that you can comment on as far as this discussion this morning?
What I can say is there hasn't been a rate case since, I believe, 2013. 2014 was the last rate case that went to the commission. There has been a rate case on the water side since, I think, 2013 or something like that. So there needs to be a look at the current rates. There needs to be a rate study done to see what's happening. We've lost we being the commission has lost oversight over what the expenses are and what the revenue is for CUC, because we haven't done there hasn't been anything reported to the commission for 6 years. So what I'm trying to say is there's obviously a need to do some kind of a rate review and a modification in some way. I know that the water rates don't recover the actual cost of the water service under the water. But thankfully, in the past, that was subsidized. I'm using the term subsidized generally, but it was taken care of by revenue that was received on the power side. But there certainly is a need for some rate movement one way or the other. And what that's going to be, up or down, I can't tell you right now.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Mr. John, I'm going to yield back, and I tend to want to endorse what you were saying earlier, that we need to have another discussion with the committee. This is actually a very important legislation that we all need to carefully discuss, because it has everything to do with the consumers, what they're paying with utilities, and I'm sure our offices, or even each of us personally, being called, as being asked what's happening with all this, so with the rates they're paying. So yeah, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Judah. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Chairman Sarek, Chairman Janice, and members of the CUC. You mentioned earlier that you need an independent attorney. I know that the law says that the AG should represent all government agency, and including autonomous. Do you have any issue with CUC at this point that you requested to hire an independent attorney?
Do I have an issue with the Attorney General's office?
With CUC?
We don't have, you mean, does the commission have an issue with CUC right now?
Yes.
We probably do, in the sense of some reporting requirements that haven't been complied with. And, but, so I can see that there is going to be a need, obviously, for some, I won't use the term hearings, but some meetings that bring CUC in to do some reporting that aren't rate proceedings, rate hearings. So I'm not sure what those will be. We haven't done that yet because we haven't had staff or anybody to deal with those. Again, I don't mean to be correcting you. I think it's clear in the constitutional provision that the AG's office represents the CNMI government and advises corporations and commissions. It doesn't say represent corporation and commissions. So a lot of times they use the term representation, but I think there's a distinction between the term representing and advising. And advising, we obviously don't have a problem with, but actually representing us and telling us what we have to do and what we don't have to do is a different thing.
So you don't feel comfortable from getting an attorney to represent PUC on the same Attorney General's office, right? So
it would depend on what the issue is. I think, under the Constitution, we can always call on them to give us some advice. And then it's up to us to deal with that issue, whether we want to deal with it through our own attorney or through their Attorney General's office. But I think there's a distinction. And again, this is something that is a little bit of a conflict, but hasn't been dealt with because we haven't reached that point yet. But I think there's a distinction between representing and advising. And under the Constitution provision, the AG's office represents the CNMI government. Now, I know that the Attorney General's office has indicated that they felt that the commission was the CNMI government. and that in a lawsuit, we should be identified as the CNMI government and not as a commission. I don't agree with that at all, but
Okay.
we're not here to argue that particular point right now.
Okay. Thank you for that. And now, how much your budget again at this time?
I don't have the exact amount. I apologize. I think it's somewhere between 220 and 250.
So,
It's-
so that number, by hiring a legal counsel and executive director and additional staff, would that be enough a number, or you need there's an additional financial impact on that? No?
It may actually go down once we buy furniture and equipment. We still have the expenses of things, but I don't know until we actually get into operation and
So
start
you
spending
don't have
money.
the number right now for the
all
total
of it-
number that
No.
you're asking?
No, I don't. I don't have that number, and that's why we appreciated the help of the chairman from CUC and the executive director for IT&E, which deals with expenses. So they really helped us formulate that budget, and we all thought that what we put in there was a reasonable number for the expenses we identified. And I will give copies to Chairman Maglona so he can distribute that copy of our budget to everybody.
Thank you. The last question. What's the number of complaints you have right now?
We don't have any complaints that I'm aware of right now.
So, yeah.
But under the enabling statute, complaints that were in existence at the time the commission lost its quorum are still there, as well as all orders, all proceedings that weren't finished, everything. So there may be something that pops up from the last commission that hasn't been dealt with and we may have to deal with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mostly Senator Frank, Senator Selena.
Thank you, Senator Paul. I have no issue with CPUC hiring its own counsel. I can understand that where the conflict could potentially exist. And of course, CUC is a represented party by the Assistant Attorney General or the Attorney General's office, and CPUC would need to be represented by a different attorney. However, I've been trying to open up the law revision or the CNMI code website to read on the constitutional duties of the Attorney General, and maybe we can somehow reconcile the need for CPUC to hire its own independent counsel with the duties of the Attorney General. I haven't been able to open it. I don't know what's wrong with the website, but that's something that we will consider as and debate on as a committee. I do have some concerns on the changes to the bill that the House adopted. For example, on page 2, line 16 through 19, if a commissioner receiving this compensation is retired within the CNMI retirement program, this compensation shall not affect any retirement benefits being received by the commissioner. And I don't mind the compensation. I have no issues with the compensation for the commissioners themselves as proposed in this bill. However, I would be recommending that in addition to what has been passed by the House, that a commissioner shall not serve on any other CNMI board, and also the per diem rates, the travel per diem rates that this bill proposes to give autonomy to CPUC to promulgate their own per diem rates. I will recommend that it follow the NIMIAC established by DOF for per diem rates. I have an issue with that. That just appears to create disparity among the entire CNMI government. I think we should be on one per diem rate. We have to follow it at the legislature. We don't promulgate our own per diem rates. So I think it's only fair to apply that across the government. On page 4, lines 6 through 8, I have no issue with the changes the House made for the CPUC to appear in court. But again, this will this will be affected once we take a look at the AG's duties on the Constitution, written in the Constitution, and try and synchronize that with the need for CPUC's need for an independent counsel. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Senator Babalta, the enabling statute is not in this bill, but the enabling statute already has a provision in it that the commissioner on our commission cannot serve on any other commission or board. And as far as the per diem rates, you can see on page 3, line 2, it's already in there that we're using the same rates as the government rates. So
Thank you, but this is an amendment bill, so we don't
I
include
gotcha.
it. It does amend the enabling statute.
It's included in there.
Oh,
Line 2 on page
Page-
3.
page 3, line 2. Yes, but it also says that travel outside the Commonwealth will be established and authorized by the commission. And yes, as the same rates established by the executive branch. So we need to amend that because
Okay.
that creates ambiguity
Okay.
in the language.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further question. Moving down on our agenda. Any further members? If none, can you get a motion for adjournment? Second discussion. Of those in favor say aye. Opposed nay. This hearing is adjourned.